I never believed in ghosts until the day I saw my dead mother-in-law standing in my backyard, leaving a homemade apple pie on our porch. My name is Sarah, and 3 months ago, my husband Jake and I moved to this quiet neighborhood in suburban Connecticut with our 5-year-old daughter, Emma. We needed a fresh start. Jake's mom, Rebecca, had passed away 2 years earlier, or at least that's what I was told. I never met her. Jake rarely talked about her, and when he did, his face would go dark, his jaw would tighten, and he'd change the subject so fast it made my head spin. The first time I saw the woman in white, I thought she was just another neighbor being friendly. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was getting Emma ready for kindergarten when I noticed a freshly baked pie sitting on our front porch. No note, no explanation. Just this beautiful lattice-topped apple pie that smelled like cinnamon and home. I asked Jake about it that evening. He shrugged it off, barely looking up from his laptop. He said maybe it was a welcome gift from someone on the block, but something in his voice felt off. That slight hesitation before he answered. The way his eyes wouldn't quite meet mine, the pies kept coming. Every Tuesday and Friday, like clockwork, always apple, always perfect. Always left when no one was looking. Emma started talking about the nice lady. At first, I thought it was an imaginary friend. Kids have those, right? But then she started getting specific. She said the lady wore a white dress and had the same color eyes as Daddy. She said the lady would wave at her through the window and blow her kisses when I wasn't looking. My stomach twisted every time Emma mentioned her. What mother wouldn't panic? A strange woman watching my child? I confronted Jake again, more forcefully this time. I told him about Emma's stories, about how scared I was. He got defensive, told me I was being paranoid, that Emma was just making things up. But I saw something flicker across his face. Recognition, maybe, or fear. That's when I installed the security cameras. I didn't tell Jake. I just needed to know who this woman was and why she was so interested in my daughter. The footage from the first week was normal. Mailman, delivery drivers, neighborhood kids riding bikes. Then, on that Friday morning, I saw her, the woman in white. She moved slowly up our walkway, carrying a pie dish covered with a checkered cloth. She was older, maybe in her 60s, with silver hair pulled back in a bun. She wore a simple white cotton dress that looked almost old-fashioned, but it was her face that made my blood run cold. Even through the grainy security footage, I could see Jake's eyes. The same deep-set brown eyes, the same shape of the nose, the same gentle smile. I rewound the footage and watched it again, and again. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. This woman looked exactly like the photos I'd seen in Jake's old albums, the ones he kept in a box at the back of our closet, the ones labeled Mom, Rebecca, his mother, the woman who was supposed to be dead. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could this be possible? I'd seen the death certificate. Well, actually, no. I realized I'd never actually seen it. Jake had just told me she died, and I'd believed him. Why wouldn't I? Who lies about their mother being dead? I didn't confront him right away. I needed more proof. I needed to understand what was happening before I accused my husband of something so insane. So I watched, I waited. I collected more footage. The woman came 3 more times that week. On Wednesday, she didn't leave a pie. She just stood at the end of our driveway, staring at the house with this look of such profound sadness that it made my chest ache. On Friday, she brought the pie again, but this time, Emma saw her through the living room window. I watched my daughter's face light up like Christmas morning. Emma pressed her little hands against the glass and waved enthusiastically. The woman in white waved back, and I swear, even through the camera footage, I could see tears streaming down her face. That night, after Emma was asleep, I showed Jake the footage. I'll never forget the look on his face when he saw her on the screen. All the color drained from his cheeks. His hands started trembling. He looked like he might throw up right there on our living room floor. He said, oh God, she found us." Found us? What did that even mean? I demanded answers. My voice was shaking, caught somewhere between fury and complete confusion. I asked him how his dead mother was leaving pies on our porch. I asked him why he'd lied to me. I asked him what the hell was going on. Jake broke down. I'd never seen him cry like that. Not when we lost our first pregnancy. Not at our wedding when he said his vows. This was different. This was years of pain pouring out all at once. He told me everything. His mother wasn't dead. She was very much alive. But to him, she might as well have been. When Jake was 15, his father left. Just packed a bag one day and walked out, leaving Rebecca to raise Jake and his younger sister, Melissa, alone. Rebecca fell apart. She started drinking. Not just a glass of wine with dinner, but the kind of drinking that changes a person completely. She'd disappear for days. She'd bring strange men home. She'd forget to buy groceries or pay bills. Jake said he basically raised Melissa himself from the time he was 16. He got a job at the grocery store, made sure his sister had lunch money, helped her with homework. He became the parent because Rebecca couldn't be. When Jake turned 18, things got worse. Rebecca's drinking spiraled completely out of control. One night, she drove drunk with 12-year-old Melissa in the car. They crashed into a telephone pole. Melissa spent 3 weeks in the hospital with a broken leg and a concussion. That was Jake's breaking point. He said he couldn't forgive her. He couldn't trust her around his sister anymore. When he turned 19 and got custody of Melissa, he cut Rebecca out of their lives completely. He changed his phone number. He moved them to a different town. He told everyone, including Melissa eventually, that their mother had died. It was easier than explaining the truth. Easier than admitting that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the worst. Jake hadn't spoken to his mother in over 15 years. He didn't know where she was or what she was doing. He'd convinced himself she was probably actually dead by now, pickled by alcohol and bad choices. But here she was, alive, sober, apparently. Leaving pies for the granddaughter she'd never met, I didn't know what to feel. I was angry that Jake had lied to me for our entire relationship. Hurt that he didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth, but I also understood. God, I understood. He'd been protecting himself, protecting Melissa. And now, protecting Emma and me from a woman who'd caused so much pain. But that woman in the security footage didn't look dangerous. She looked broken. She looked like someone who'd lost everything and was desperately trying to catch a glimpse of what might have been. I asked Jake what he wanted to do. He said he didn't know. He buried his face in his hands and just kept saying he didn't know. I made a decision then that I'm still not sure was right. I told Jake I wanted to talk to her. Just me. I wanted to hear her side of the story before we decided anything. He looked at me like I'd suggested jumping off a bridge. He said it was a terrible idea. He said she'd just manipulate me, lie to me, make excuses. He said that's what addicts do, but I couldn't get that image out of my head. The woman standing at the end of our driveway, crying as she waved at Emma. There was something there. Something that felt like more than just manipulation. I waited for her. The next Tuesday morning, I sent Emma to my sister's house and I sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, waiting to see if she'd come. She did. Right at 9:30, just like clockwork. She came walking up the street carrying another pie, and when she saw me sitting there, she stopped dead in her tracks. For a moment, I thought she might run. Her whole body tensed up like a deer about to bolt, but then our eyes met and I saw it. That same look Jake gets sometimes when he's trying really hard not to cry. That same vulnerability. I said, "Rebecca," she nodded slowly. Her hands were shaking so badly the pie dish rattled. I invited her to sit down. I don't know why, maybe it was stupid. Maybe Jake was right and I was being naive. But something in my gut told me to listen. She sat on the opposite end of the porch, keeping distance between us like she was afraid I might attack her. She set the pie down carefully and folded her hands in her lap. She said, "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't be here. I needed to see him, to see if he was okay." Her voice was soft, worn down by years of regret. She didn't make excuses. She didn't try to justify what she'd done. She just sat there, looking small and tired and so incredibly sad. I asked her how she found us. She said she'd hired a private investigator 6 months ago. She'd been sober for 8 years, going to AA meetings, working as a receptionist at a dental office, trying to build a life that meant something. But she said there was this hole in her heart that never healed. The hole where her son and daughter used to be. She said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I was a terrible mother. I failed them in every way that mattered, but I needed them to know that I'm sorry, that I've changed, that not a day goes by that I don't regret what I did." Tears were streaming down her face. She didn't wipe them away. She just let them fall. She said she'd been watching our house for 2 months before she got brave enough to leave the first pie. Apple pie was Jake's favorite when he was little. She used to make it for his birthday every year before everything fell apart. She thought maybe, somehow, he'd know it was from her, that he'd understand she was trying. I asked her why she didn't just knock on the door. Why all the secrecy? She laughed, but it was hollow, painful. She said, "Would you let me in if you were him? After everything I did?" She had a point. I wouldn't. Hell, I wasn't sure I should be talking to her now, but then she asked about Emma. Her voice changed when she said my daughter's name. It got softer, filled with this aching tenderness. She asked if Emma was happy, if she was healthy. If she liked kindergarten, she said, "She looks just like Melissa did at that age. Same curly hair, same smile. I saw her playing in the yard last week and I thought my heart would break right there on the sidewalk." This woman had been watching my child, learning her routines, observing her life from a distance like some kind of ghost. It should have terrified me. But instead, I felt this overwhelming wave of sadness. For her, for Jake, for all the years they'd lost. I told her she needed to leave, that she couldn't keep coming by, couldn't keep leaving pies, couldn't keep watching Emma from afar. I said it wasn't fair to any of us, but especially not to Jake. She nodded. She understood. She stood up to leave, and that's when she pulled something from her pocket. It was a letter. Sealed in a white envelope with Jake's name written on the front in careful, shaky handwriting. She said, "Would you give this to him? Please, he doesn't have to read it. He can throw it away. But I need him to have it. I need him to know." I took the letter. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a mother too, and I couldn't imagine living in a world where my daughter hated me so much she pretended I was dead. Maybe because everyone deserves a chance to say they're sorry, even if that apology is never accepted. Rebecca walked away, and I watched her disappear down the street. She looked so small, so alone. I sat there with that letter in my hands for a long time, trying to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do with it. When Jake came home that evening, I told him what happened. He was furious. He said I had no right to talk to her, no right to let her anywhere near our property. We had the biggest fight of our marriage. He said I didn't understand. I said he was right, I didn't, because he'd never trusted me enough to tell me the truth. That hit him hard. He went quiet. Then he saw the letter on the kitchen counter. He stared at it for a long time, just stared, not touching it, not speaking. The silence in our kitchen was so thick I could barely breathe. Finally, he picked it up. He turned it over in his hands like it might explode. Then he walked outside to the backyard, and I heard the lighter flick. I thought he was going to burn it. But he didn't. He just stood there, holding the letter in one hand and the lighter in the other, frozen in indecision. I gave him space. I put Emma to bed, did the dishes, tried to pretend my heart wasn't racing. When I finally went outside an hour later, Jake was sitting on the porch steps with the letter open in his hands, tears streaming down his face. I sat next to him and waited. He didn't speak for a while. Then, in this broken voice I'd never heard before, he started reading parts of it out loud. Rebecca had written everything. About how she'd hit rock bottom 10 years ago and finally checked herself into rehab. About the years of therapy and AA meetings and learning to forgive herself, even though she knew he might never forgive her. About how she thought of him and Melissa every single day. About how proud she was of the man he'd become, even though she had nothing to do with it. She wrote, "You saved your sister. You became the parent I couldn't be. You built a beautiful life with a beautiful family. I don't take credit for any of that. That was all you. But I want you to know that I see it. I see what an amazing father you are. I see how loved Emma is. And it breaks my heart and heals it at the same time because you broke the cycle. You became everything I wasn't." Jake was sobbing. Full body, can't catch your breath sobbing. I held him while he cried for the mother he'd lost, for the childhood that was stolen, for all the years of anger and pain he'd been carrying. He said, "I don't know if I can forgive her, Sarah. I don't know if I want to." I told him he didn't have to. Forgiveness isn't something you owe anyone, even family. Especially family sometimes. But I also told him that maybe he could consider meeting her. Just once. Just to see if there was anything left to salvage, or if he needed to close that door for good. It took 3 weeks before Jake agreed. 3 weeks of long conversations, of him calling Melissa, who was living in Oregon with her own family now. Melissa was angrier than Jake, if that was possible. She said their mother was dead to her and always would be. She said Jake was crazy to even consider it, but Jake said he needed to do this for himself. He needed to look her in the eye and tell her how much she'd hurt him. He needed to say all the things he'd been holding inside for 15 years. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. I came with Jake for support, but I sat at a different table, giving them space. Rebecca showed up 15 minutes early. I watched her through the window, pacing outside, checking her watch, smoothing down her dress. She looked terrified. When Jake walked in, she stood up so fast she almost knocked over her chair. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. I could see Jake's hands clenched into fists at his sides. Could see Rebecca's chin trembling as she tried not to cry. Jake said, "Hi, Mom." Those 2 words broke her. She covered her mouth with her hand and just wept. Jake stood there, rigid, not moving toward her or away. Just standing in this awful space between anger and grief. They sat down. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but I watched. I saw Jake's face go through 100 different emotions. Anger, pain, confusion. At one point, he stood up like he was going to leave, but then he sat back down. Rebecca did most of the talking. Jake mostly listened, his jaw tight, his eyes hard. The meeting lasted 45 minutes. When it was over, Jake walked out without hugging her, without any kind of goodbye. He just left. Rebecca sat there alone for a long time after, crying into her coffee cup. In the car, Jake was silent. He didn't speak the whole drive home. When we got inside, he went straight to Emma's room and just watched her sleep for a while. I stood in the doorway, giving him space but letting him know I was there. Finally, he said, "She's been sober for 8 years." 8 years, Sarah. She's been going to therapy, working on herself, trying to make amends. And I didn't know. I didn't know because I decided she was dead. I asked him how he felt. He said he didn't know. Angry still, hurt definitely, but also something else. Something like relief maybe, or closure. He wasn't sure yet. Over the next few months, Jake met with Rebecca 4 more times, always at the coffee shop. Always with me nearby but not interfering. Slowly, carefully, they started to rebuild something. Not trust, not yet, but communication, understanding. Rebecca never asked to meet him. She said that was a decision Jake and I needed to make together, and she would respect whatever we decided. She said she'd already taken enough from Jake. She wouldn't take his right to protect his daughter too. That restraint, that respect for boundaries, meant more to Jake than any apology ever could. 6 months after that first conversation on our porch, Jake came to me with an idea. It was Emma's 6th birthday coming up, and he wanted to invite Rebecca. Just for an hour. Just to meet her granddaughter officially, not as the mysterious woman in white, but as grandma. I asked if he was sure. He said no, but he wanted to try. The birthday party was small, just family and a few of Emma's friends from school. Rebecca arrived with a homemade apple pie and a stuffed bunny for Emma. She looked so nervous I thought she might pass out right there on our lawn. Emma ran up to her immediately, no hesitation, no fear. She said, "You're the pie lady." "Daddy says you're my grandma?" Rebecca knelt down to Emma's level, tears already streaming down her face. She said, "I am, and I've been waiting so long to meet you properly." Emma hugged her. Just threw her little arms around Rebecca's neck and hugged her tight. And I watched Jake's mother completely fall apart, holding on to this grandchild she thought she'd never know, sobbing into Emma's curly hair. Jake stood next to me, his hand finding mine and squeezing tight. He was crying too. We both were. It's been a year now. Rebecca comes to dinner once a month. She never overstays her welcome. She never pushes for more than Jake is willing to give. She's patient and respectful and so incredibly grateful for every moment she gets. Is everything perfect? No, Jake still has hard days. Days when the old anger flares up and he needs space. Days when he remembers what it felt like to be a scared teenager raising his sister alone. Rebecca understands. She never makes excuses. She just keeps showing up, keeps being sober, keeps being the mother she should have been 15 years ago. Melissa still won't speak to her. Maybe she never will, that's her right. But Jake says he's glad he gave their mom a chance. Not for her sake, but for his. He says carrying all that anger was exhausting. Letting some of it go, even just a little bit, has made room for other things. Better things. Emma loves her grandma Rebecca. She doesn't know the full story yet. Someday, when she's older, we'll tell her. But for now, she just knows that grandma makes the best apple pie in the world and gives the best hugs and always remembers to ask about her favorite stuffed animals. Last Tuesday, Rebecca came for dinner. She brought pie, like always. But this time, Jake hugged her when she arrived. It wasn't a long hug. It wasn't the kind of hug you give someone you fully trust. But it was a start. After dinner, while Rebecca and Emma were coloring at the kitchen table, Jake pulled me aside. He said, "Thank you for not giving up on her, on us. I would have spent the rest of my life running from her if you hadn't made me stop and listen." I told him that's what family does. We stop running long enough to hear each other, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, that woman in white isn't a ghost anymore. She's not a mystery or a threat, she's just Rebecca. A grandmother who made terrible mistakes and is spending the rest of her life trying to make up for them. A mother who lost everything and somehow found her way back. And sometimes, late at night when I can't sleep, I think about how close we came to never knowing her. How close Jake came to carrying that anger to his grave. How close Emma came to never knowing her grandmother. Life is strange like that. The people we think are gone sometimes aren't. The doors we think are closed forever sometimes open just a crack. And sometimes, if we're brave enough, we walk through them. I'm not saying everyone deserves a second chance. I'm not saying all broken relationships can be fixed. But I am saying that sometimes, the ghosts that haunt us are just people who are haunted too. And sometimes, the only way to stop running from them is to turn around and face them. Rebecca still makes apple pie every week. but now she makes it in our kitchen, with Emma standing on a stool beside her, learning the recipe that's been passed down through generations. Learning about the grandmother she almost never knew. Creating memories that will last long after the pies are gone. And every time I see them together, flour on their hands and smiles on their faces, I think about that first pie left on our porch. That mysterious offering from a woman in white who just wanted her family back. She got it. Not all of it. Not perfectly, but enough. And sometimes enough is everything.